Now available for the first time in paperback. Why 70% of black women are single. Learn all the reasons why so many black women can't find a husband and why 70% of black women are single. Get your copy of Why 70% of Black Women Are Single on Amazon.com today. A 35-year-old black single mother is charged with murder after her white boyfriend allegedly wound up murdering her 8-year-old autistic son in front of her, and then they both left the son's body abandoned in an apartment for over a year where it decomposed into skeletal remains. Now, this case of 35-year-old Gloria Williams, a mother of 6 children, and her white boyfriend, Brian Cutler, a 31-year-old man, proves many of the points that some black YouTubers have made about the so-called hashtag divest movement. And in this dark and twisted story of a so-called divester, we have a 35-year-old woman who practically was out here and abusing her 6 children by multiple black fathers. And then, after abusing these children, then after the white man murdered her autistic son, then goes out here and leaves that boy's remains inside of an apartment with three other children, and those children have to sit there and try to fend for themselves as this boy's body decomposes to skeletal remains. And when I take a critical examination of this extremely disturbing case, it shows me how deep the mental illness is as related to those women out here who are so caught up in these white men and practically deify and worship these white men. And when you look at the mugshot for your Gloria Williams, she is definitely a black female who has an extremely bad case of self hatred, because here we have a picture of a dark skinned woman with her hair colored blonde and clearly showing that she has some detachment from her blackness and a subconscious anger and hatred for her blackness, and even, I believe, a subconscious hatred for her black children that she had by those black fathers, because the only reason why she would allow those children to be harmed is if she had a deep seated hatred of one, her blackness, and two, a deep seated hatred of those fathers, and wanted to see those children suffer on a subconscious level to get revenge on those fathers. Because many of the grandmothers of those children had constantly called this mother and asked to take custody of those children so that they could be properly cared for. But instead of going out here and giving these children some sort of care and trying to meet their needs, what your Gloria Williams did was deny those grandmothers the opportunity to take custody of these children that these grandmothers knew were being abused. And instead of going out here and allowing those grandmothers to care for those children, what your Gloria Williams allegedly did with Brian Cutler, her white Zaddy, was go out here and abuse these children. And what makes it so cruel, again, is these 3 children that were left. These were children with disabilities, and the boy who wound up losing his life was a nonverbal autistic child. That's the kind of stuff that makes me say that both of these people are going to burn in hell for doing this, because this kind of evil, it's something that I think God would look down and he would get angry about, to sit there and abuse children who are disabled and cannot take care of themselves. That's a high level of evil, and it just shows what kind of monster we're dealing with here. Because again, when you're dealing with a child with disabilities, you would think you would want to take extra care, But this white man only cared about himself, and this black woman didn't even really care about herself because she was so deep filled with self hatred that she allowed these children to be abused instead of getting proper care from the black grandmothers who were on the father's side. And this woman practically let these kids sit there and live in squalor because it was all about her feelings about this white zaddy. And as long as she had her white zaddy, she was in heaven, but she didn't care about the hell she was putting these children through. Now, three other older teenage children were trying to fend for themselves, and they themselves talked about how they had not seen their mother in months because the situation with them was so toxic with this woman because all she wanted to do was argue with them. And I believe the reason why she was having arguments with the older children was because she still had a lot of anger at those fathers that she had been involved with sexually. And because she was angry at those fathers, what she wanted to do was destroy his children because that's what a lot of these extremely dysfunctional women, what they want to do is they want to destroy their children. And I believe that's why this whole family just was in just such chaos. And the oldest daughter, who had left 2 years ago, she often argued with the mother about and the white man about abusing her brother. But there was only so much they can do because this woman was estranged from her relatives and she was participating in extremely dysfunctional behavior. Every 3 to 6 months, she was moving from place to place, and there was never a solid address. And she was just denying all of the problems that were going on. People would ask questions about the children, but she would sit there and lie about what was going on as related to these children. And she kept lying because she wanted to keep this white man in her life. And because she wanted to stay with her white zaddy, she didn't care about her children. And again, this shows a high degree of depraved indifference as related to this Gloria Williams, because no mother with a maternal instinct would leave her children to suffer like this or leave them in a life where they are moving from one home to another and not having any sort of stability. And that again showed how deeply depraved this woman was and how indifferent she was to the lives of her child, because as long as she had her white zaddy, she was in her own world and she was willing to abandon her children so that she could remain in her own world, because her world was the only thing that was important, and being with this white man was more important to her than her children. And again, this is the type of mental depravity that many of your divestors go out here and talk about. And this is them going out here talking about this white man is better. And I have to ask a critical question. How is it better when a white man goes out here and abuses a autistic child? Answer that question for me, all of you so-called swirlers and divestors. How is it a good thing when a white man sits there and abuses a child who cannot defend themselves? One, because they are smaller and younger, and two, because they don't even have any sort of mental capacity whatsoever to even be aware of what's going on. For a person to go out here and abuse a mentally disabled autistic child, that's a form of evil that only Satan would go out here and say is good. And this is the kind of person who I know, once they get him inside of that penitentiary, after they finish curb stomping his sorry ass, what they're going to do is gladly trade this fool's booty for some ramen noodles, Little Debbie snack cakes, cups of coffee, and go out here and spit roast this fool, and he would deserve every last minute of everything that he gets inside of that jail, because everything he did to those children by, again, murdering this little 8-year-old boy and then leaving his body to decompose into skeletal remains, he deserves every minute of what happens to him inside of that penitentiary. And as they tear that tight end into a wide receiver, he would deserve every last minute of that. And this female, I mean, this is just an evil human being who deserves to be in prison for the rest of her life, because people who participate in this kind of evil, they deserve to be put, I wouldn't even say the jailhouse. They deserve a place in hell for the evil that they've done. And to say that you're going to worship this white man to the point where you're going to go out here and again allow one of your children to be murdered and then abandon your disabled children. This is just some of the most evil things I have ever heard in my life, and it just absolutely makes me sick to hear about this horrific story, because it just proves many of the points many YouTubers have talked about the so-called hashtag divest group and these women's whole deification and worship of white men, and to sit there and to murder this child, and then sit there and then this guy, this white male, he's allegedly was boasting online about food as he was on the run with this self-hating black female, while these children were starving, and one of the boys' remains was decomposing to a skeletal remain. This is one of the alleged reports, and I'm going to leave the article there for you to read it about how sick these two people were. And again, if this is what you're divesting to, it just shows how deeply disturbed these women are, because these women, they say they want to leave the black community, but when I look at them, the black community would want no parts of evil like this, because for you to sit there and watch as one of your children is beaten to death, that's again a level of evil when you think about it that should make you sick to your stomach, because a mother should be wanting to love her children to the point where she would fight to protect her children. And when your child is autistic and cannot defend himself, and in some cases doesn't even know where they are, and you allow this monster to murder your autistic son, that is some kind of evil that, again, if there was a death penalty, this guy deserves it. And if this guy goes in the penitentiary, whatever happens to him, he's convicted of these alleged cases, and it's proven, he would deserve everything that he receives. I mean, this is a guy who has a special place in hell, and this woman has a special place in hell, because the evil they have done is just as unspeakable as the evil that was done on that SEPTA train in Philadelphia. And again, I look at this case and it just makes me sick to my stomach, and it just makes me it just disturbs me to hear people being this sick and twisted. And it should make all of us, extremely upset. And if this is what some of your black women want to divest into, it shows that we have an Arkham asylum here in the black community, and this is one of the inmates that needs to be locked away to keep our community from the clear and present danger of them. If you want to see me make more videos like this, and I really don't like making videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to learn more about the disturbing, dysfunctional behavior of beta males like this, and what leads to them participating in this disturbing and extreme acts of violence, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBook store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle, Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Learn how to avoid predatory females like Instagram models and e-girls in their virtual con games with Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Get your copy of Stop Simping in Cyberspace in paperback and Kindle today.